Hi, my name is Mike Peller, and I'm the assistant head for teaching and learning at the White Mountain School. I'm here with Gabe, who's a biology teacher, and Sam, a statistics teacher, and I want to share a great example of some work, collaborative work that they did between their bio and stats class. When I was talking with Gabe earlier, he was sharing this cool project that he was doing with his biology class and how it interacted with the stats class. So, Gabe, can you share a little bit what you were doing in your bio class?
Yeah, so we started to look at genetics, and so I brought it from the lens of looking at human genetic traits so students could have a sense of connection with themselves and family members and other friends or acquaintances. So I had them do a quick survey of approximately 10 different genetic traits found in humans, and they surveyed family members, they surveyed friends remotely, and then we got back to class and we compiled all of that data and looked for trends. And then Sam was talking about how they were looking for data for their statistics class. And so I reached out to him and said, "Hey, would you be interested in this?" And he said, "Yeah, I'll take a look at it." So I sent it to him.
I think sometimes that serendipity is hard to manufacture in a school. Like, how does what? Tell me a little bit about how that conversation was happening between you and Sam that allowed for the connection to be made.
Yeah, and so it was in a combined math science department meeting where we were just discussing what we were doing in classes. So yeah, it was very spur of the moment and very low stakes because I already had the data there, and he was like, "Yeah, send it along, and I'll take a look at it and see if it's something we can use in class."
And then Sam, in terms of like for your class, how relevant was that experience? Did it fit in fairly naturally, or did it feel like something that was patched in?
Yeah, so I had asked for data just to see like what's out there if any of the science teachers had something they could share, and Gabe brought it over, and it turned out to actually fit directly in the unit we were doing. So we were looking at Bernoulli trials and probability models, sampling distribution models, specifically with proportions. And so this idea of kind of binary genetic data fit right into the next topic we were covering, which was creating confidence intervals. So if you sample a population and you get some given proportion of the population that has, say, attached earlobes, how do you know how representative that number is of the whole population, right? You might have just gotten a really bizarre sample of folks. So we were working on that math of how do we extrapolate from these samples to larger populations using statistics, and that data was perfect. So we took it. I had each of my stats kids kind of choose one of the traits that Gabe's students had investigated and gotten data on. They created those confidence intervals, so saying based on the data that you've recorded, here's what we think the true population average would be across the US. And I think one really cool thing that came at the end of it, I like sent the data over to Gabe, and he was like, "This is great. I want to show it to my students. Is there any way that you could have a student kind of like explain what you did or what they did?" And so one of the students in my stats class offered to do an explainer video, and he jumped on Loom and did a recording of like all of the work that they had done to create those confidence intervals, which was really cool.
Let's have a look at the Loom video that the student made.
Hey guys, it's Hayden. Been chosen for my stats class to explain what we did. We do the 95% confidence, which basically says with 90 what we do at the end with 95, we can say with 95% confidence that the percentage of people with attached earlobes will be between these two numbers.
I just love how this project has moved from one class to the next and extended that learning and has allowed students to be teaching other students. And then just as a quick follow-up of that, which I think is just such an amazing example of students learning from students, and how do you have some of the older students in the stats be really lend some of their work to the ninth grade, mostly ninth grade students in the bio class. For that student who created the explainer video, what was he using as references? Have you been doing a lot of videos like that for your classes?
I'd been doing a few, but it was interesting. I put it out there, like, would anyone be interested in doing it? And he was like, yeah. And I said, great, I can like show you how to use some screen software and stuff like that. And he was like, oh, I'm all set up with it. I know how to do it. So he already had all the tech there ready to go.
Cool. And then Gabe, what was it like for your students to receive that the statistical analysis that those students did, and in particular the video from one of their students?
Yeah, it brought the circle all the way around, which was great, because we in bio we haven't done a whole lot of statistical analysis. Essentially, we have talked about how collecting more data leads to more confidence, but we hadn't really done any statistical analysis. And so I showed them the statistical analysis spreadsheet that Sam sent over, which I didn't really expect them to understand, but I was like, this is what came about of this. And then I showed them the Loom video in class, which led to this great discussion, because the student was talking about how much, as more data was collected, there was more confidence in the numbers that were being extrapolated from that, the statistical analysis. And so it led to these really interesting conversations about how do we collect data. Some of the students were like, well, I just collected it in my family, which causes some in the long run might kind of skew the data a little bit. So if I was to do this more, maybe I should send out a Google survey to the whole community and gather that data. And so it led to some really interesting discussions that we hadn't had yet over the course of the year, even though that we've been collecting a lot of data in class since day one. And so the students received it really well. And they're like, whoa, somebody took this data that we collected in class and used it and analyzed it. So it was this really cool experience for them to see that what they did actually can be used to create some interesting data about different traits that are found in humans.
And the last question, and interested to hear what the answer to this might be. So this all happened while we've been doing remote learning. In what ways do you feel like the remote learning experience actually helped facilitate these interactions? Or do you think this would happen naturally during school when we're in person?
I think in some ways, remote learning has kind of forced a level of creativity, right? That if you are kind of gotten into a groove with your class, that it's like, we do this the same way, and it's, which is not a bad thing. But I think moving to remote learning has made us kind of open up and say, like, well, this is new. What are kind of the options and potential things I can do here? That I think kind of sparked that connection. I don't know if I would have reached out to Gabe otherwise and said, like, hey, do you have data I can use? If I hadn't kind of been looking more creatively at what stats class could look like.
Yeah, and I would say, like, the way that we collected and compiled the data in class was done on Google Docs, and was done in a way that was easy to share, where it might not have been done that way if we were in the classroom. And so it was the methods of how we collected the data, the ease of just sending it over to Sam and be like, this is low stakes. Like, if he uses it, that's great. If not, that's great too. It's already here, it was compiled, made it much more easy to do that. And so thinking about the future of, like, how can we compile data in ways that's easy to share and put it out there? And yeah, it was, I think we obviously see each other a lot when we're on campus, more so than remotely. But I feel like, like what Sam was saying, I feel like there's more of a sense of creativity in what we are doing and just trying things out. And this is one of those where it's like, all right, let's try it, see what happens. And it ends up turning out to be a really cool learning experience for both the bio students and, it sounds like, Sam's class, and especially this particular student who Sam worked a lot with to explain the data that was collected.
Thank you both for sharing. I think this was a truly exceptional example of cross-disciplinary learning and learning among students and students teaching students. So I appreciate you guys taking the time to share the process with me. Thanks a lot.
Yeah, thank you, Mike.
Yeah, thank you, Mike.